Because it's so warm and beautiful out, I thought I'd get out the garage and run all the bikes. I like to run them at least, the minimum, once a month. And today, because it's warm, is a good day to do it. Oh, I love the sound of multiple engines running. Now, we haven't had them started in a while because it's been so cold out. Like fighter planes on a runway in World War II. So this morning I got all the bikes run. It's just a spectacular day out there so far. Probably going to snow this afternoon, but we got all the bikes run, which I like to do about once a month, and we're ready to get back to working on that wheel. No. Our neighbor Sarah has a dead battery. So I've used this 4 or 5 times. I did Kevin's car the other day. Actually, I did his police car. Oh, and so you're on the list of people that have been rescued.
Helped jump their batteries.
This thing is so priceless. I'm telling you, priceless. Yeah. When you're on a motorcycle and priceless.
I'm sure. All right, I'm gonna go pull her car out and
switch the cars. Yeah. Rescued. The Polish rescue team. So here we are, and I always say how crazy it is, those little battery chargers. Luciano rescued me one day. I went home and bought the thing the next day, and we've done at least 4 or 5 cars with them now, including this morning. All the bikes are nice and quiet, but it still smells like carbon monoxide in here. Oh my God. But that battery charger is a great thing. Boy, does that work great. Especially when you're far from home and you have an old motorcycle. So here's the little thing. That guy is worth its weight in gold. And we also have the big charger now. We'll charge Sarah's car up, and maybe that battery can be saved. I don't know. But I always do like to start off a day with a great adventure. Every day is different. So I want to get started today with some 600 in DASA. You get this wheel sanded out. Boy, we had a crazy day going here, but looks like we're going to be able to paint if we get this done. Step 1 on this wheel is I want to really detail sand it out very, very carefully with 600. It doesn't matter really where I start or where I end, but I want to get it all smoothed out. That's going to add a nice little touch to the final finish and make the actual final finish of the wheel that much nicer. Now, good old Indasa 600 is really good for sand and primer. If some of this is a little rough or had overspray, I'd consider 400, but I really like to get the whole thing done with 600. This becomes one of those jobs that it's just time consuming. It's going to take the better part of a pot of coffee, but it doesn't really matter. And we've had, yesterday was so nice, and today looks like it's going to be good, so I'm trying to sequence up some of the things that I can do here that'll make this job go a little quicker. And hey, that battery jumper, that's a wonderful thing, boy. That has served me well. And since the day Luciano rescued me with his, wow, gotten good use out of it. It adds a nice level of security when you're on a ride far from home, 100 miles from home. That thing starts looking better and better. Anyway, this is going to be, we know it's going to be time consuming. There's just no way to skip through it or anything, but yeah, it looks like the 600 will be fine. Now, one thing I will do, I will put another light coat of primer on this, just to be sure I don't have any. Oh yeah. Yeah, once you sand, and then if you take your hand and put it where you haven't sanded, it's a no-brainer. That is areas I always want to pay real good attention to, down in these valleys, because that's where you tend to not be able to get your sandpaper to go down. In this edge along here, just a couple of things I'll really pay good attention to. And out at the lip, especially where our repair is, I want that to be, when I put that yellow stripe on, I want it to be that it looks like we used a brand new wheel right out of the Yamaha stock from 30 years ago. And the goal, of course, is to make it the evil twin to the front wheel. And the finish on that was a long, in fact, it's getting dusty sitting in the shop here. Wow. I'm gonna have to get one of those little dust fuzzy things to run around and dust my motorcycle with. As I did earlier today, I always try to show what I do. Not that what I do is the perfect be-all end-all, but something you can reference. You can decide whether it's successful or not on your own, that's for sure. I always, at least when the temperature gets up over 40 degrees, at least once a month, and if it's warmer, even a little more often over the winter, try to run each one of the bikes for a few minutes, bring it up to temperature, and what that does, it keeps fuel in the float bowl, because usually over the winter, the float bowls dry out, and then those little Viton tips get to be tentative that they don't seal correctly. It's just precautionary, because it's from the days of owning a real airplane that was part of the routine of owning the plane that I owned anyway, that I was aware of the maintenance was to turn the propeller over so many blades every week, and it served us well. So just to have it. I'm sure some people just lock up their motorcycle over the winter, and that doesn't, I guess they're fine, but you never know, because it's really not a contest. You really can't tell if you win or lose, because you can't live the life that you would have the other way. So, but anyway, I do like to share that information. That's something I've done for my whole life, at least ever since the 70s when I did own an airplane. And as I've said before, it's information that has served me well. Now, one of the areas I'm spending more than the amount of time I normally would is this hub, because I know from this side, with the only thing you're going to see is the sprocket, the chain, and you do see the whole rest of this wheel. So I'm really putting in some extra time here. I really want all these radiuses and everything to be as nice as possible. But like anything, it just takes time. I can picture when they built the pyramids of Egypt, the pharaoh telling them, hey, look guys, it just takes time, you know, it's not a big deal. Just 80 million man hours, no problem. But anyway, it looks like it may even warm up a little out there. I don't know, we may get up into the 40s today, in which case painting will be a joy. Painting's always a joy, isn't it? Sure it is. Now, before I start the second side, it's time for a good coffee break. This work drones on, and an extra cup of coffee seems to make it go quickly. Now, what am I doing here? Look at this. Look at this. The Eagles are back. They were boycotting me this morning. They said, go work on that wheel by yourself. I just checked the temperature. It's 37 now, going to 45. We will be able to paint this afternoon. Wow. I found in dealing with a big sanding job, nothing is better than just taking a lot of breaks. Anyway, I got my little sanding stick, and what I wanted to do is very carefully detail out the hub on this side. Again, as if this was a surprise. Just takes time. And the thing that's hard to convince people of is that it's worth it, because in the end, and I like to think of, I go out to the garage and I look at the green bike, for instance, and I say, was it worth putting all that time in? I put a whole winter of work into that bike. Well, if I had spent that whole winter, you know, watching the grass grow or something else, I wouldn't have the green bike. So to me, it is worth it, but of course, every person is different. And all this detail sanding, it seems like at this point in the job, it seems like it's an unending battle, and it goes on forever. And the day you go out, the first day and ride the bike, you forget all about this time and you go, what was I going to do instead of that, by the way? I don't know. Everybody's got something they enjoy. It's hard to criticize people that like other stuff, because this is what I like, and I do enjoy sharing it on YouTube. And maybe you enjoy watching it. Hey, that's a pretty good combination, isn't it? Maybe I should run for mayor of the dog catcher in town or something. Anyway, I'm going to detail this out. I'm going to keep drinking coffee because it looks like we have a paintable day. Now, if we didn't have a paintable day, well, I'd be a little less enthusiastic, but I am going to spend the time necessary to do this. I really can't emphasize over and over again, it just takes time. And again, the good thing about this, almost no money. Couple sheets of sandpaper, 4 or 5 sheets of sandpaper. But the end result is you have something really, really special. One of the goals of this whole sand out is to get all these areas, and if you were to try, as an example, to put your finger in there, you're going to miss spots. These are so handy, these nail files, because the part that has sandpaper on it already grips the sandpaper, and that's the whole trick here. Now, what I do, I know there's 6 segments. So I would do 1 segment, go around, sometimes you have to catch an edge. 2nd segment, kind of keep track of how many you're doing. At least that's the way I've been doing it. 3rd segment. 4th segment, keep it good and wet. 5th segment, now this is just, I'm doing this in a very speeded up fashion just to make my case. Now that I've got that done, I want to flip the wheel and do this side. And it's the same thing when you spray. You've got to constantly be moving. You don't want to only spray from one direction. You've got to kind of be moving around. You know, and the hard thing about all this is, if nobody ever shows you how they do it, well, you're free, of course, to improvise anytime. But if nobody ever shows you the way to do it, you'll figure it out, but it'll take a much longer time. It took me a long time to figure some of this out, because years ago in the 70s, there was no YouTube. And a lot of the information that was available, people were perfectly willing to help you, except I didn't live in California or in Nevada or something. And so that's the beauty of what we can do with YouTube, among other things that you're able to share. And it just makes for a much more interesting, if you call this a hobby, I don't know if you call it a hobby or an activity or an addiction. We don't like to use that word around here. Anyway, and I've heard, it's really good news, they're going to legalize coffee in New Jersey soon. And when they do, am I going to be lucky? I'm going to just buy it at the local dispensary. And that's the whole secret to all this stuff. Keep your caffeine level very high. Now, it looks like I've got about another 15-20 minutes here. It's warming up nicely. The next step on this is going to be to totally dry it off. Prep it up with a tack rag. Get some tin foil around the... See, I'm always as I'm doing this, because this allows a lot of free time to think about things. I'm always thinking of the next step. And that's one of the things that allows me to get more done, say, than if I was in prison on Rikers Island or something. I'd have all day to do this. Anyway, I just hope some of this information is useful, some is helpful, and the people that don't agree with me, you know, that's fine too. We all have our own little addictions. Now, one final tip I forgot to mention, but it's definitely something you want to keep in mind. At this point in time, when I'm drying this off, what's a good idea is just take a hairdryer and warm the part a little bit. The reason is some water always winds up getting down into the nooks and crannies. I don't want to spray over any water. And the one thing I learned, and this is a really good tip. At this point, forget about using prep oil. What I had happen many times is I had the towel just a little bit too wet and it would start softening the paint. I don't want that to happen. Now what I'm going to do in the meantime here, I'm going to run the AutoZone. I'm going to get a brand new can of self-etching primer, brand new, because a brand new can, there's where places I've sanded through, I want to put on a very, very thin, accurate coat. I don't want it to be a big, thick, heavy coat. Then I'm going to let that dry about an hour and decide if the weather's appropriate that I can get the black sprayed. I don't know. But again, not trying to rush it, but trying to take advantage of good sequencing for a day that's the last couple of days. If I wasn't working on this project, I'd be out riding with Jose. I'm sure there are people out riding today. No, absolutely. I hear engines going by. Anything that gets above freezing, and the guys that are they're dying to go riding. I know that. Everybody, the first time you see a petunia, you want to go, ah, spring is here, let's go riding. But the truth is, I really want to finish this, and I want to do it to the best of my ability. Now, lucky for me, there's a well-stocked AutoZone only blocks from my house. I want to get a nice fresh can of primer. I don't want to take any chances I'm going to get a big spit out or a glob on that. And sometimes just a little step like this, a little step of one extra trip to the store or one extra something, and the whole job gets nicer. And that's what we're trying for on this job. We want it to be a match, an evil twin to that front wheel. And as I pull back in the yard, look at this. Look at this miracle of miracles. 41 degrees. 41 degrees. Boy, that black paint is going to go on so nice. Well worth getting a brand new can, because that brand new can will always spray nicer. And on this final coat, see, what I'm trying to do is just cover up. I really don't need a coat on everything, but I'll probably just put a light coat on the whole part, because the primer, self-etching primer, acts as glue. And when you leave this step out, sometimes you escape, but then sometimes you don't. Now you really start to see the result of all that sanding and all that detail work out in the sun here. Now, there really is, that's really some, that's going to be a nice wheel. I'm pretty sure the weather is going to hold out. This needs at least an hour to dry, and I'm going to put it down in the cellar for an hour. Let it dry and set up the airbrush. I'd like to do this with the airbrush the way I did the well, we're gonna find out. I did the front wheel, I did the edge thinking I'd only do the edge, and it worked out so well I wound up doing the whole wheel. And this may be an appropriate one, and because time is not a factor right now, maybe I will set up the airbrush and do the whole wheel with the airbrush. A very faithful Iwata airbrush. Now, this has really laid down a nice smooth coat on the front wheel. I didn't expect it to be that good, but I still have the paint. I still have both of the jars, in fact. And I'm hoping we're going to be able to get a really nice coat on that wheel. And that minimizes the work of all the sanding and buffing it to clear to a certain amount. Anytime you can make something smoother and more level, somewhere down the road you save time in the buffing and the sanding. And we buffed that whole front wheel out by hand, so I know it paid. Now, of course, there's some pluses and minuses to using an airbrush. One of the minuses is you got to keep filling it up. But one of the pluses is the paint lays down with almost zero orange peel. And that should, when the clear goes over that, that should be just like the front wheel. Well, the only thing that spoiled this whole thing was that the wind was kicking up and blowing. Well, I hope very soon this wheel is going to take its place right alongside of this wheel, because this is really the last part we have to restore before we start assembling a bike. That's when it starts getting exciting. So I hope you enjoyed the video. The wheel is looking good. I always feel good at the end of a day like this. Anyway, and thanks for watching.